Macarons are one of my favorite things to make once I have mastered it. With this video, I will show you how I make it and tell you guys all of my secrets on how to make the perfect macarons. Tip number 1. Make sure you measure it with a scale in grams. It is very important to measure it in grams instead of cups because it's more accurate on making the perfect macarons. You're going to need 150 grams of powdered sugar, 150 grams of almond flour, 150 grams of sugar, 40 grams of water, and yes, make sure you measure the water in grams. It's very important. You're going to need 2 separate bowls of 55 grams of egg whites. Tip number 2. It is important to weigh out your egg whites instead of guessing how much eggs you're going to need in this recipe. So approximately you're going to need 3 to 4 eggs depending on the size. But like I said, please measure your egg whites and make sure you're using real egg whites from the egg instead of the one in the carton. And then you're going to need some food coloring if you want your macarons to have some color. Tip number 3. Make sure you're using gel food coloring because if you use liquid food coloring, you're basically adding an extra liquid you don't need in the meringue, which will make your meringue flop. Here, I'm adding the powdered sugar and almond flour in a food processor to make it extra fine and lose any big clumps. If you don't have one, I recommend swiffing your ingredient 3 times. I understand that swiffing ingredient is a lot of work and annoying, but it is going to help your macaron shell look flawless instead of having big chunky macaron shells. And then we're going to add in your first portion of egg white, fold it until well mixed. At this point, you can heavily mix it until it's combined. No need to worry about over mixing it right now. Afterwards, just cover it to make sure it doesn't get dried up. Now we're going to make a sugar syrup, which we're going to add it in the second portion of the egg whites. Give it a good stir one time. After that, don't touch the sugar syrup. Boil it on high until you start seeing bubble forming, but turn it down to medium high and let it simmer. Let it simmer until it reaches 110 Fahrenheit and then start your mixer on a 4 speed. Once it reaches 118 Fahrenheit, then take the sugar syrup off the stove and start pouring it in slowly. Once I pour the sugar syrup halfway, I like to speed up my mixer into a 6 speed. And then I finish pouring all my sugar syrup. I'll speed it to an 8 or 9 high speed. Let it mix for a good 3 and 4 minutes on high speed. And then add your food coloring. And mix it for another 3 and 4 minutes on high speed. This is how your meringue is supposed to look like, glossy and stiff peak. I like to split it into 3. I will scoop the first portion into the almond flour, fold until just combined. I'll do the same thing with the second portion, fold until just combined. Until when I add the third portion, I will slowly fold until I reach the lava or figure 8 stage. Fold until you can make a figure 8 or when the ripple disappears in 10 seconds. I like to let the meringue set for 5 minutes before I start putting it in a piping bag because I felt it helped make it more firm. If you pipe it right away, it's a little bit runny and you won't have full control over it when you're piping it. I am using a stencil to help me pipe, but you could just freehand it too. Once you're done, give it a few taps. Let it set in a cool place for 30 minutes for the skin to form on the macaron shells. Let it bake at a 330 Fahrenheit convection oven or 300 Fahrenheit oven for 14 to 16 minutes. Tip number 6. It's very important that if it's your first time making macarons in your oven, that everybody's oven is totally different. You gotta play with your oven temp and the time when your macaron is finished. I know it's a little bit frustrating, but macaron is kind of picky. Too hot and it will burn, and too cool and it can underbake. Once you find the sweet spot, then your macaron will turn out perfect every time you make them. Once it's done, let it cool completely. Here I am just filling it with some vanilla bean cream cheese frosting. And voila! Your macaron is done. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos to come.